Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Ken Smith, and today's video is how the Model A got its name and became the car that saved Henry Ford during the Great Depression. I'm going to cover real briefly just how Ford began. With the help of 12 investors who invested a total of $28,000, the Ford Motor Company was launched in 1903. The first president was not Ford, but actually a local banker named John S. Gray, who was chosen in order to reduce the investors' fears that Ford himself would leave the new company the way he had left its predecessor. The Model A, which became the forerunner of many types of vehicles that the Ford Motor Company has since produced and sold, was manufactured at the company's first facility for assembling automobiles. This facility was a rented wood frame building on Mack Avenue in the east side of Detroit. This Model A was designed in large part by C. Harold Wills, an accomplished draftsman who served as the Ford Motor Company's chief engineer. This automobile did not have a top, and it was built to accommodate both the driver and a passenger side by side on a bench in the front seat section. The above image was included in an advertisement for the Model A that appeared in a December 1903 issue of the journal Automobile Review and Automobile News. The biggest competitive advantage of this new automobile was its two-cylinder, 8-horsepower engine. This engine was the most powerful to be found in any passenger car at that time, and it enabled the driver to reach what was then the comparatively high speed of 30 miles per hour. With some sales overlap, the Model A was replaced by the Ford Model C in 1904. The now legendary Ford Model T was introduced just 4 years later. Now, the Ford Motor Company produced the Model T from October 1st, 1908 to May 26, 1927. And it is generally regarded as the first mass affordable automobile which made car travel available to middle-class Americans. The relatively low price was partially the result of Ford's efficient fabrication, including assembly line production instead of individual handcrafting. It was mainly designed by 3 engineers. Although automobiles had been produced from the 1880s until the Model T was introduced in 1908, they were mostly scarce, expensive, and often unreliable. Positioned as reliable, easily maintained, mass market transportation, the Model T was a great success. In a matter of just days after its release, 15,000 orders had been placed. The first production Model T was built in August 12, 1908, and left the factory on September 27, 1908, at the Ford's main plant in Detroit, Michigan. On May 26, 1927, Henry Ford watched the 15 millionth Model T Ford roll off the assembly line at its factory in Highland Park, Michigan. Henry Ford conceived a series of cars between the founding of the company in 1903 and the introduction of the Model T. Ford named its first car, obviously, the Model A, and proceeded through the alphabet up through the Model T, 20 models in all. But not all the models went into production. The production model immediately before the Model T was the Model S, an upgraded version of the company's largest success to that point, the Model N. The Model A that we know and love today could have been named the Model U, but the company decided not to do that since the Model A was going to be so revolutionary. They decided not to call it a U and start all over again with the letter A. Edsel was a good businessman, and he knew how much market share Ford Motor Company had lost to Chevrolet and Dodge. Henry, rich with his past, didn't care. He thought the Model T was the perfect car forever. In time, Edsel brought in designers to start a styling department at the Dearborn automaker. Unlike his father, Edsel had an art patron's eye and understood how fashions and tastes change. Edsel knew that they had to create something unique instead of the Model T, and so he began designing the Model A. For those who may not know, really, Henry Ford's son Edsel is really the designer behind the Model A. Edsel's design of the Model A and being so involved in its cosmetic designs really made a beautiful car that helped get the company in a strategic position and back on top. After a long period of anticipation, during which it's said that other manufacturers' sales suffered because customers were waiting to see what the new Ford would be like, the Model A was finally revealed on the 2nd of December 1927. Estimates of the number of Americans who went to their Ford dealers that day ran well into the millions, often exceeding the number of people who actually bought one. In fact, it is thought that as much as a quarter of the U.S. population viewed it in the first week of its launch. Much of the advertising for the Model A was designed to make it appeal to the female drivers. The pictures shown here appear in an ad above the statement, "Winter days are happy days for the women who drive the new Ford." The same ad claimed that the car could also give men the means by which they can do more work and better work and thereby increase their earning capacity. Movie stars like Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford were husband and wife from 1920 to 1936. And right in the middle of their marriage, Fairbanks bought Pickford a Model A as a Christmas gift. Though considering their combined wealth, it was more likely to have been intended as a toy rather than an important means of getting from A to B. Nonetheless, it drew people to the Model A. It took Ford only 14 months to produce 1 million Model A's. Another milestone was reached in April of 1931 when a slant window screen town sedan, body style 160B, became the 20 millionth car ever built by the Ford Motor Company. Presumed lost, the car was rediscovered in Michigan in 2000, and Ford paid for a full restoration in return for being able to use the car in displays and exhibitions for 10 years. Having replaced a car which had been on the market for nearly 2 decades, the Model A itself survived for only 4 years and 4 months. It was replaced by both the Model B and the Ford V8, which were essentially the same car with different engines. And also the Model BB truck replaced the Model AA truck. Now these are just my thoughts, and I just kind of sometimes wonder what would have happened had Henry Ford died at, say, 59. Edsel would have been quite young, and Edsel lived out his life to the age that Henry Ford did. Now, I'm not really too sure how that would have played out. The company wasn't fully owned by the Ford family around 1912, and it's doubtful that the investors would have handed over control to then a 19-year-old Edsel, regardless of his status as Henry's son. But if Henry had died at 59, which would have been 1922, or even 69, which would have been 1932, I think that opens up more speculation. The Ford Motor Company was a privately held company by the early 1920s, and Edsel would have been old enough to take charge. Edsel would undoubtedly have made sure that Fords and Lincolns stayed abreast of technological advancements that were being offered by GM and Chrysler. Ford wouldn't have lagged the industry in adopting hydraulic brakes and would have offered independent front suspension sooner than 1949. Whether Edsel would have approved the 1932 V8 is a good question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I also doubt that Edsel would have chosen to wait until 1939 to introduce Mercury. The medium price market was recovering from the Great Depression lows by the mid-1930s, so I imagine that he would have pushed for mercury's introduction before 1939. And unlike his father, I believe that Edsel probably would have reached an accommodation with the UAW prior to 1941. Still, those are just my thoughts, and they're just that. They're my thoughts. Anyhow, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe. It's so important to us. But most of all, be blessed.